Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to all of you. And I thank my good friend, Dr. Rajan Ravichandran, for giving me a chance to talk to you. We've been friends for 30 years. We started in our friendship, blossomed from, again, because of my father, who was a kidney patient. He treated him for 6-7 years. And I used to visit him almost every day. One of the memorable collaboration with him is on indomethacin during the COVID times. And it was a chance that I met him in his room. And I was so fascinated with the way he explained how indomethacin works. We took it very seriously, and we did very interesting trials. Unfortunately, we could not get it through to the ICMR, though there have been so many papers after COVID that the only medicine which actually works in COVID-19 in ICMR, and Dr. Rajan Ravichandran was the first to recognize it on, if I remember, March 26th or 27th, around that time in 2020. And it's been a great pleasure working with him. Almost every day I used to call him during that time. So actually, we wanted to hold a workshop on artificial intelligence, but we couldn't because of COVID. And I'm sure we have been talking about it. Maybe by coming August, we may hold a workshop especially for doctors. One of the first questions, in fact, he invited me to give a talk on artificial intelligence to the nephrologist in one of his conferences. And after that, the first question that came up was, will I lose my job? So actually, the first question everyone has is whether I lose my job, will computer take over, and what will happen to many of us and so on. That's a small aspect of artificial intelligence, especially when in medicine. There are many, many things that machine learning and artificial intelligence can do, which can make patients' outcome better. In fact, all of us work for making patient outcome better, especially working in tandem with the doctor. Let that be very clear. Especially for people who are very sick. And we are talking about the 5% of people who will get into trouble when they visit a doctor. The help of artificial intelligence can fine-tune the type of clinical advice or clinical procedures that the doctor can do. So that fine-tuning with technology is much more important than whether it will take over our job or not. Apart from that, there are very interesting things that are going to happen in the next 5 years. And I'm going to just run through them. There's a lot of jargons in this. I'll try my best to give you a glimpse of what is going to happen. This is one of the most interesting things. Imagine that a patient goes to a cardiologist, and the cardiologist takes a fundoscope to look at your eye, and out comes an MRI image. It's very interesting that with the fundoscope today, using artificial intelligence, you can get MRI data such as left ventricular end diastolic volume, what the cardiologist require. So one type of image can be converted to other type of images, which is something which can make our life not only easier, but also the cost may reduce. There have been a number of papers. Maybe the next 5 years, you would see one type of modality. For example, ultrasound, which is common in fetal medicine, can be converted into an MRI image. Okay, so that's where the technology is moving. And then the surgeon's planning before. In fact, we are working with JIPMER on neurosurgical planning. Completely planned before the doctor actually enters the operation theater. And we are talking about planning for very, very difficult neuro surgery cases, and it's something like searching for a needle in a haystack. So artificial intelligence and machine learning can help the doctor to solve this problem of actually approaching the tumor without damaging the other parts of the brain. So artificial intelligence is doctor's assistant. So imagine that a doctor is doing a very difficult case. In the middle, he has a doubt how to proceed. We all are happy, when the doctor comes out, and we don't realize how much of risk doctors take. One of the reasons why we formed Medical Sciences and Technology Department at IIT Madras is for the doctors, to the doctors, of the doctors, because we have the duty to help them. So we don't realize what are the things that they face as they treat the patients. So as the doctor is operating, suddenly he has a doubt whether he has to do this or that. What is the route he has to take? AI can help at that point, showing him what can lie in the future if you operate or if you proceed in this path. And then there are more and more imaging techniques that are coming up. High resolution images are very important today. And in fact, artificial intelligence can give you very detailed image using a very simple imaging platforms. One of the most exciting things that's happening where we are working is on digital twins. So what are digital twins? Imagine that you go, unlikely that you develop something, but still, if the patient goes to a doctor, imagine that the doctor creates a digital twin or a virtual patient in his computer. So you go and sit there, Dr. Rajan Ravichandran opens his computer and says, "You are here in my computer." Okay, and it's a difficult case, as usual. He handles very difficult cases, and he now wants to plan how to treat it. He wants to be very clear that 1% of the patients who he may lose, he does not want to do that as well. So he can use this digital twin, your twin sitting in the computer, and then he can actually give medications to that digital twin of you, exactly you, okay, and then see how that's going to work. He always says that 10% of the patients who are diabetic, for example, may end up in dialysis. In fact, he can see in the computer whether you have that risk, whether you would end up in dialysis, and what can be done. There are a number of drugs which have come up today, and what type of drug you have to be given so that you can be saved from kidney disease. So digital twin is a very interesting technological advancement which I think we should all watch, and there are very interesting research that's going on even in IIT Madras. So the key question is that, can we predict clinical outcomes? In fact, we have done virtual surgeries with this. There are some of the congenital heart problems have been solved using what is called as a Fontan procedure. And the procedure will it be successful for a cardiac surgeon? I work with Dr. K.R. Balakrishnan at MGM. So we can actually predict that. So what is a long-term effect? Say, for example, salt, you can easily find out, okay, from your nutrition, what will be its long-term effect to you. And ultimately, it's a personalized medicine that we are moving towards. And artificial intelligence is going to take us to that kind of personalized medicine. So there are a number of, I'm not going to in the details of it. Already Dr. R.C. had said what are the simple tests that need to be done in order to predict the future. But many times, most of the times it works, but it may not work under certain conditions. And so we may have to have a much better or a holistic procedure in order to find out whether the simple tests are enough. So that is where digital twins come into picture. Digital twin is not new to the industry. There are digital twins of the factories, for example. There are mechanistic models, mathematical models. Digital twin is actually mathematics. So, in fact, I tell my students, Dr. Varshini, who's an MBBS doctor and who's doing a PhD, is here. We are all a set of differential equations. We are 128 coefficients in the differential equation. If a couple of them go wrong, you go to Dr. Ravichandran. That's all. So, the whole world of artificial intelligence reduces to a mathematical formula and solve it in the computer. Nothing more than that. So, we have mechanistic models, and the mechanistic models are solved, okay, in order to see what will happen to you in the future. In fact, it's a massive industry. It's a $140 billion industry. By the end of it will be $140 billion industry by the end of 2030. So, if the industry uses it so much, why not? I'm talking about chemical industry, mechanical industry, for example, automotive industry, and I'm sure Mr. Shankar here would know about that being used in the chemical industries and so on. In fact, there are very interesting things that happen in the United States apart from Trumpism. One of the things that happened in 2015 is a declaration of President Obama. So he wanted to collect all the data on 1 million patients to bring the United States closer to an era where medical treatment can be tailored for each individual patient. I would say it's a beginning and it's going to take decades in order to do this, but it's a very good beginning. So what is digital twin? A lot of people give very different explanations to what a digital twin is. So what we do is, I have millions of copies of individuals, okay, based on thousands of disease-relevant molecular and clinical variables. Then, if a patient is available or a patient comes, then he is fitted into one of those patients, million patients who's lying in the computer. Then each twin is computationally treated. Look at the word computational. That means mathematically treated. As I said, everything is mathematics. Is treated with one or more drugs. There can be so many drugs that may be available. So then, from the computer output, the doctor can find out, okay, whether a particular drug, what he had chosen, can cure you or not. If that is what he sees, then that particular drug can be given to you. So this is what the technology of digital twin is all about. So we have, the key for this are data. We have to collect a number of data, a large amount of data. The second is a mechanistic model. This is a mathematical model. In other words, what is happening inside you is expressed in terms of mathematical equations. We connect these two, the data that is collected and the mathematical model of physiology. In fact, we offer courses like quantitative physiology. The young lady sitting here was just telling me how, as a medical student, I can excel in mathematics. So the big wall between engineering science or engineering and medicine is now broken. So many doctors I talk to, they say, "Engalukku maths e varala, pesama doctor aitom." Nowadays you can't say that. Though they are brilliant, that's what usually they say, but no more you can say that, because you are going to in future look at a patient as a mathematical equation. So we then have this kind of mechanistic model. We connect these two and then build this patient. Okay, because of lack of time, I'm not going into the details of it, but I hope you got a gist of what we are doing. A very interesting paper which came out very recently, 2024, is to look at digital twins to identify and predict chronic kidney disease in type 2 diabetes patients. This is a beginning of an era, and very impressive work has been done by the Singapore group, which actually produced a digital patient from the parameters that you usually measure from blood, from urine, and so on. So they take this, and then this becomes the state of a patient inside. And then all the metabolic activities inside the patient is now explained. So in other words, they start with the state A. Okay, today you have these values for these parameters. Then the mathematics inside starts churning out. So what happens, say for example, after say 6 months? How would these parameters actually change? That mathematics which has those coefficients are your coefficients. So the computer can tell you in next 6 months, is it going to worsen or not? You can in fact put nutritions, what you are going to eat, inside the model. Of course, you're going to have your gender, your age, and all those things. And then the computer will tell you what is going to happen after 6 months, maybe 2 years, 3 years. They're looking at predictions up to 10 years. So these parameters are used to build these parameters along with, as I said, what's happening inside is used to build you inside the computer. So it's a very long story, so I'm not going to go into the story as to how to build this, and it may not be even important for this audience. But people who are inclined to this science, I'll be very happy to talk to them after this talk. So ultimately you can, as I said, we have, we can group the patients depending upon their output that you expect. Okay, lastly, so we can see that there can be a correlation between observed input and those parameters which we saw, that's the input, and the output, whether a CKD can be developed. These are some of the correlations between many of the parameters which we saw. I'm skipping all that. So you can see this, what is called as the relationship between prediction and the actual case. So the area under that blue curve actually gives you how accurate your predictions are. And the area under the curve, AUC as it is called, larger it is, better it is. So what essentially this paper clearly showed is that instead of predicting the future using a couple of parameters, 2-3 parameters, as a whole if you take, including the what's happening inside, then the predictions are much, much better. And your status after years will be known very clearly. The results, there are so much of results, I think they are not important, just to show you or tell you that this is the way the world is going. In fact, they very clearly showed that with a very simple model of 2-3 things, the results may not be very accurate, especially for critically ill patients. So in fact, we have done a lot of work on digital twins for cardiac patients. For example, these red dots are computer patients. These patients are sitting in my computers, which are virtual patients or synthetic patients which we bring about using mathematics. And you can see that these blue dots there are actual patients. So in other words, for every blue dot who's a patient, I have a red dot who's sitting in the computer. So you are very close to one of the red dots, which is actually a patient in the computer. And now I can follow that red dot to which you are very close to and see how that patient in the computer is going to perform over a period of time with various drugs. And then that can be correlated to your outcomes, okay, and what is going to happen to you. This is not just, it's not just work in progress. We have applied this and, in fact, treated patients using the digital twins, including surgery planning. Very critical surgeries where 4 different possibilities are there. Digital twins have helped doctors to say, hey, this is what you should do. So these, we have done it, and we have treated patients with this kind of digital twins. So in fact, there's a very interesting news sometime back, or not sometime, yesterday rather, at Times of India, about a new drug which is going to, whose price will be reduced by 90%, and that this drug is out of patent, and there are very many companies who are going to produce in India. In fact, the paper which I showed you, the digital twin, which was created, was actually the patients there was treated with this drug, and they showed the effect in the computer that it would be. Mr. Sundar is looking at me, so I would rather. Curiosity. Wind up. I'm always afraid of him. Strict with his time. So these kind of things are possible. Apart from this, there are very many number of things that are possible. Maybe some other time we can have a much larger interactions, and I would be glad to talk to anyone who's interested to talk about this. Free to talk to me. Maybe a couple of questions if you have, I will answer it and finish it.